Here's what an NFC scouting director told ESPN about Jerry Jones and my Dallas Cowboys. Here's the quote. I don't really understand the plan there so far this offseason, but there's a lot weighing on this draft, and they seem to be confident about finding a bunch of starters. This is exactly what I've been saying on this show for a month. So, Keyshawn, how realistic is it for the Dallas Cowboys to find, 4 or 5 immediately productive rookie starters in this draft?
They can do that.
It's a lot, man.
No, it's a lot, but you can do it. You usually 4 or 5 starters that are rookies, they don't come, it just doesn't happen. There's maybe like 2 guys that are rookies who'll start.
Yeah.
But I've never seen the Dallas Cowboys try to insert 4 or 5 rookies into their starting lineup. Yeah, when you get Ezekiel Elliott, he's your starting running back. When you get a Tyron Smith, he's your starting left tackle because where you drafted him at.
Okay.
I'm not drafting a guy in the third round to be my starter. Maybe eventually he can become a starter. If I'm drafting a certain position in the first round outside of the quarterback position, he's probably going to be my starter. So if I'm taking an offensive lineman in the first round, it's probably going to wind up being my starter. If I'm taking a defensive lineman in the first round, it's probably going to be in my rotation heavily. If I take a corner in the first round, he's probably going to be in my rotation heavily. They have so many spots that they've got to plug that the rookies aren't going to necessarily help them plug those spots immediately. But you got to also think of this, man. Dallas Cowboys are low-hanging fruit for people to gossip about every single day. They just low-hanging fruit.
Okay.
Because of how they operate. So every single day we're going to come up here and there's going to be a topic about the Dallas Cowboys because they're always doing something.
Well, they're fun to bash, right?
They're fun to bash. Yes, that is correct. And so when you look at it, the draft is in 2 weeks. Post-draft, it'll be so many players that did not get drafted, so many players that did not sign in free agency. Then there'll be other players that are being released on other teams because they drafted somebody to replace them, so they'll let them go right before minicamp. So you'll have your pickings all the way up into training camp because there'll be people that'll be released between now and the time you start training camp. There'll be guys that you thought should be signed. Stephon Gilmore hasn't signed yet. He's still available. So you look up, and here's a guy that you know, he's available. We'll sit him out and wait a little bit longer. And then there's other guy we'll sit out, wait a little bit longer. They're there. You have players that are available that can play the game. So this notion that they're going to draft 4 or 5 players that are rookies that'll come in and start for them, no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen at all. Maybe 2, but that was always going to be the plan. Every year, there's 2 rookies that start that you draft. And that's just every year. Every team does that. The rookie's going to start.
All right, here's what I know about Gerald Wayne Jones Jr., the owner and operator of the Dallas Cowboys. He does not want to plunge in free agency because it's too easy. For him to just throw money at this player or that player, not since Deion Sanders has he done that. And that was a very rare commodity that you were throwing a lot of money after because it could literally change life between San Francisco and Dallas.
The game changer of the league.
Of the league and of the
conference or whatever you want to call it.
But you could say of the century, of all time. Yes, okay. Jerry loves the draft because Jerry runs the draft, and ultimately Jerry has final say on these draft picks. Do I think he scouts draft picks and studies a lot of film? I do not. But Will McClay is very good at what he does, and their scouting staff is very good at what they do. And I'll throw in their assistant coaches seem to be very good at what they do in evaluating prospects. But it's Jerry who gets final say. The buck stops on his desk. And so he can take a lot of pride and satisfaction in, I picked him, and I picked him, and I picked him, and we did this, and we moved, we went up and down in the draft. He loves that because it makes him happier. It helps build his ego and his reputation around the league because people do know that on draft night, he is the king in their war room. He is the one with the final say. So the point is, I'm going to give you one great stat for Jerry Jones. Over the last decade, the Dallas Cowboys have drafted more Pro Bowl players who became Pro Bowl players for them than any other team in the league. They have 15 in the last 10 years. Next on the list is Baltimore with 12. So you got to give Jerry, because he's the one.
Yeah, but I've always said from a talent evaluation standpoint, Jerry's always been at the top of his game.
Okay.
Along with everybody that works with him.
Okay.
The problem is the guys on the sideline coaching him up hadn't done a good job.
That's the problem. I agree. All right, so what just happened? We lost two really good offensive linemen. You mentioned one, and then we lost our center, Tyler Biadasz. You've got to replace both of them. You have two backups who might be pretty good, but you need to draft a couple of linemen who will be pretty immediately starting for you. And is that possible? Sure, that is possible. That's probably the position that is easiest, because it seems like this draft is deepest in offensive linemen. Then you obviously need a running back. This is not a deep draft for running backs, but I think you can get a pretty good one maybe in the second round who could be a starter for you, or at least a rotational contributor for you. Then we lost Leighton Vander Esch, and he did make a Pro Bowl, but finally his neck gave way and he just couldn't go on. So we signed the immortal, what was his name, Eric Kendricks from Minnesota for Coach Zim, our new defensive coordinator. That's fine. He'll be the quarterback of the defense, but we need a stud linebacker. We need somebody drafted fairly high who can step in and have some impact.
But you have a lot of needs, Skip, as I've been telling you since the season ended. You have a lot of needs. When you have a lot of needs and have a lot of things that you have to address, you have to address your own players in the finances. You cannot afford to go out there and spend money on non-Deion Sanders game changers. You just can't. You can't do that.
Okay. And by the way,
if you said to me, Keyshawn, we have an opportunity to go sign Aaron Donald because he wants to play for the Dallas Cowboys, but the Rams have his rights, and we are going to pick up his $35 million, and we're going to get a Rams a third-round pick to acquire him. Do you know what I would tell you? Y'all better go do that yesterday.
Thank you.
But that's a Deion Sanders type guy.
No, I'm with you.
That's a Deion Sanders type.
Okay. I should mention, they did draft that kid out of Texas, Overshown, who can be an impact linebacker, and he tore his ACL in training camp last year, so I don't know, can he bounce back and have the impact? Maybe.
You know, there's a $65 million difference on your salary cap from the players that had cap numbers in 2023. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Zach Martin, Trayvon Diggs, Terrence Steele, Trey Lance, they're now accounting for $65 million difference in an increase from a year ago.
Okay.
So that money that you think you saved by getting rid of or allowing other players to walk and getting rid of other players, that money now is cashed into these dudes.
But that's why Jerry says, give me these rookie contracts. I can fit them in. You know, I can slide them right in, right?
You have to.
Okay. All right, I got it. You mentioned Stephon Gilmore. Is he really coming back or not? He's made trips to Charlotte. And,
I don't know. It's a wait-and-see game because a lot of players, as you know, they get out into the open market, and a lot of times it's not there that they're looking for, and they come back home.
So Deron Bland could slide into his spot. Jordan Lewis could play nickel, maybe, but you probably need to draft another corner at some point in the draft. And then we lost Michael Gallup, and I'm not saying he was a game changer, but we drafted Jalen Tolbert to replace him, and I'm not sure about Jalen Tolbert. Do you need another receiver? Probably you do.
Yeah, but you can find a third or fourth guy.
All right, maybe. And then brings me to one swing and potential miss.
There's a lot of veteran receivers still available.
I got it.
For that less than the number Gallup was going to make.
Okay. Mozzie Smith. They took in the first round last year. He didn't show me enough. He didn't get enough reps. He didn't get enough snaps to say, I know. But usually those guys drafted that high.
They going to play a little more.
You just say, hey, he can play. Because they've been so good at drafting Pro Bowl players, he does not yet look like a Pro Bowl player. Is he going to snap out of it in his second year? I don't know. Because all of a sudden you lost Hankins and Gallimore, and then off the edge you lost Dorrance Armstrong, and you lost Dante Fowler. So you got a bunch of holes in your pass rush rotation or just your defensive line. You better go get one.
But those guys that you mentioned are all replaceable.
Okay, but you better go get somebody who works.
And they're approaching that, Skip. The draft is in 2 weeks.
Okay, but I just gave you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 needs. Can you get 5? Can you plug 5 in who can immediately start for you and be productive?
Well, they may not start, but they could be in your rotation. And those are bodies. Those guys that you're telling me aren't the reason that your defense was supposed to be lights out. That's not the reason. You can get bodies all day long, and I think that the Cowboys certainly could do that via the draft. And once again, there's guys in free agency that's not signed, that is low-hanging fruit, that's sitting there, and they just waiting. It's all about the deal making. Jerry wants to cut the deal, okay? You got Stephon Gilmore still out there. You have a number of wide receivers that's still out there. You got running backs that's still available.
Yeah.
Okay, it may not be your A-plus running back.
No.
But maybe you don't need an A-plus running back. Maybe you just need somebody that could fill in here and there and do some things in the run game for you.
Yeah.
You don't always have to go get the big stars. Again, I'll tell you this, Skip. Outside of Deion Sanders, there hasn't been a lot of game changers in the National Football League in free agency that all of a sudden you signed them that year, they done took your team and got you over the top. I'm not talking 3 or 4 years after they sign y'all go to the Super Bowl. I'm talking about right now.
Okay. I'm going to double down on this. This roster, as I see it right here, right now, is not a playoff team. We've lost too many. We have too many holes to fill. But you do have a draft, which you have dominated. And now, more than ever, you need to plug these holes through the draft immediately. And this is
You need a running back, another receiver.
2 offensive linemen.
But the offensive their offensive line is intact. They got 5 guys.
No, they do not. They got 2 backups.
They're only backups because they were backing up guys that left in free agency.
Well, do you think they're stars?
But those guys that left, everybody that left in free agency wasn't stars.
You need to draft 2 linemen who'll plug and play.
You probably need to draft 2 linemen to back the guys up that you already have, Skip.
I don't think so. No.
Oh, so you don't like the backups because they backups.
Well, I mean, these are undrafted guys. So
but there's a lot of guys that be undrafted that go on to have success in the National Football League.
Hey,
they miss
the quality is sinking into the sunset. Trust me. All of a sudden, the Dak Prescott you love is going to be running for his life if you go with those backups.
I don't know that to be true.
Yeah.
Because they may love those guys enough and like them enough. That's why they let the others walk.
There's a lot of pressure on Jerry in this draft. That's what that quote is. That's what he's saying. And once upon a time, this is way before your time, the draft master, who was Gil Brandt, drafted 12 rookies in 1975, and they were called the Dirty Dozen rookies. This is way before your time. They had 12 who plugged and played, and they went to the Super Bowl. All right?
This was like 1965, too.
Okay. All right, up next. This is interesting to me. It's a little harsh. It's a little rough.